Student Loan Exit Counseling by Texas A&M University, Kingsville, Title V, I-CARE grant. Best of luck as you leave college and move on to the next chapter in your life. Whether you are graduating or withdrawing from classes, you'll be glad you came to this session. This exit counseling session is for student borrowers under both the Federal Direct Loan Program and the Federal Family Education Loan Program, including a special type of a loan called the PLUS loan. In this session, which federal law requires you to attend, you will review your rights and responsibilities and will emphasize the options available to help you successfully repay your loans. This material is not intended to constitute any tax, investment, or legal advice. If you need investment, legal, tax advice, and/or credit counseling, please consult with a professional within those areas. Think of this session as being like an instruction manual on how to manage your federal student loan or loans. It may not all stick as we go through it, but you'll get a reminder of all the things you learned in entrance counseling about how things work, and you'll get more specific information about your repayment options. Let's begin by saying that borrowing money is a serious matter. You have an obligation to repay the money that you borrowed. Otherwise, there are some very negative consequences that can affect your life as you leave school. For example, if you default on your student loan, it negatively affects your credit report. Default occurs when you fail to make payments for 270 days. Also, when you apply for a job, potential employers may check your credit reports before making you an offer. A negative report may prevent you from getting a job, which could mean you won't have an income to pay your bills. There are options available to help you manage your student loan debt and avoid default. Part of avoiding default is staying in contact with your financial aid office and loan servicer. Other consequences that you may experience as a result of not paying your student loan include your federal tax refund may be withheld as payment toward your defaulted loan. You may be unable to renew your professional license, medical, legal, real estate, or cosmetology. A percentage of your wages may be withheld by your employer and sent to pay for your loan if you default. When you try to buy a car, a house, or rent an apartment, you may fail the credit check or get a much higher interest rate due to your negative credit history. If you decide to return to school for another degree, you will not be eligible for additional federal financial aid unless you resolve the default. You may be sued if you fail to repay your loan. Expensive collection fees can be added to your loan principal to help cover the collection costs on your defaulted loan. Debt collectors will be authorized to pursue repayment of your defaulted loan. However, if you do fall into debt, you should know that the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, FDCPA, prohibits debt collectors from using abusive, unfair, or deceptive practices to collect from you. But regardless of those protections, it is still best to avoid the many negative consequences of default. Do you remember when you got your first loan and you signed the Master Promissory Note? The MPN, or Master Promissory Note, is your written promise that you are going to repay the loan. It still counts as a written promise even if you sign it electronically, and you're still held to this promise whether or not you complete the program or get your dream job. Depending on your school's policy, if you decide to return to school, you may be able to use the same MPN to borrow multiple loans for up to 10 years, or you may need to sign a new one for each year in which you borrow a new student loan. Texas A&M University, Kingsville, allows a multi-year policy in which the same MPN applies to multiple loans. This document contains specific details and terms about your loans, and you'll want to make sure you always keep a copy. Over the course of your life so far, you may have noticed that everything doesn't always go exactly according to plan. What if, once you're in repayment, you don't get your billing statement because it got misrouted? What if you graduate and can't find a job? Or you're not happy with your school? Or didn't graduate on time? Or what about any other number of problematic what-ifs? What then? The bottom line, you're still responsible to work out an arrangement by which you can repay your loan. Keeping in communication with your loan servicer is your key to repayment success. Your MPN specifies when your loan will enter repayment. In most cases, repayment begins after a 6-month grace period. Each loan has only one 6-month grace period, and the grace period begins the day after you graduate, withdraw, or drop below half-time enrollment. Once the grace period has been used, it's gone. This means that if, for example, you used your grace period while taking a couple of semesters off, then return to school, your loan may go directly into repayment when you graduate. Also, whether your loans were subsidized or unsubsidized, your MPN specified the terms. It's also the case that you may have one or more MPNs, if, for example, you attended more than one school. Here are key differences of subsidized loans versus unsubsidized loans. Notice, for example, that subsidized loans are need-based and that the government generally pays the interest as long as certain requirements are met, while unsubsidized loans are not need-based and interest accrues on those loans while you're still enrolled. Another important point regarding direct subsidized loans is that if you borrowed your first loan on or after July 1st, 2013, there are limits on how long you may continue to receive direct subsidized loans. You may not receive direct subsidized loans for more than 150% of the published length of your program. For instance, if your program length is 2 years, your maximum eligibility period is 3 years, which means you can only receive subsidized loans for 3 years while in the program. That is 2 multiplied by 1.5, which equals your maximum eligibility period. If your program length is 4 years, your maximum eligibility period is 6 years, which means you can only receive subsidized loans for 6 years while in the program. That is 4 multiplied by 1.5, which equals your maximum eligibility period. The remaining eligibility period is your maximum eligibility period minus the sum of your subsidized usage period. If you continue to be enrolled in your program after you exceeded your maximum eligibility period, you are no longer eligible to receive subsidized loans. However, if you need to borrow more money to complete your program, you can still get unsubsidized loans. Contact Texas A&M University Kingsville Financial Aid Office to get a summary of your subsidized usage period. Also, be aware that if you continue enrollment in that program after receiving 6 years of subsidized loans, or enroll in a shorter program at that point, you lose your interest benefits on the subsidized loans that you took out beginning on the date of your next enrollment. In other words, you become responsible for paying the interest on your subsidized loans even while you are in school, during your grace period, during periods of deferment, and for some income-driven repayment plans. What is the impact of your responsibility for accruing interest on your total student debt? Well, capitalized interest increases your loan principal, increases your monthly payment amount under most direct loan repayment plans, and causes you to pay more interest over the life of your loan. Your federal loan servicer will let you know whether you are responsible for paying accruing interest on your subsidized loans if you lose your interest subsidy because of continuing an undergraduate program after reaching your maximum subsidized loan eligibility. You may also access the National Student Loan Data System, NSLDS, to determine whether you are responsible for accruing interest on any direct subsidized loans.
Now moving on to PLUS loans. The term often refers to loans parents use to help pay for their dependent children's undergraduate costs. They're also an option for graduate and professional students. As with the other loans we've been discussing, there's an MPN for PLUS loans, which is a binding legal agreement promising to repay your student loans. It details a lot of specific information about your loans. If you took a PLUS loan for your graduate education, you signed an MPN. Depending on your school's policy, you might have signed a new MPN each year or just once. Texas A&M University, Kingsville, allows a multi-year policy in which the same MPN applies to multiple loans. Repayment of PLUS loans technically began once you received all of the money upon final disbursement. However, these loans have some flexible benefits, one of which is that you don't have to actually begin making payments until 6 months after graduating, withdrawing, or dropping below half-time status. Also, you can prepay all or part of the loan with no penalty. Prepayments may substantially reduce future interest costs. The interest rates on direct subsidized loans, direct unsubsidized loans, and direct PLUS loans are fixed rates that are calculated each year in accordance with formulas specified in the laws and regulations that set the terms and conditions of direct loans. When the rates are calculated, they apply to all loans for which the first disbursement is made during the period beginning on July 1st of 1 year and ending on June 30th of the following year. Each loan you receive over the course of your education may have a different fixed interest rate depending on when the loan is first disbursed, the loan type, and whether you are an undergraduate student or a graduate or professional student. Each type of loan has a maximum fixed interest rate, or cap. The maximum interest rates are 8.25% on direct subsidized loans made to undergraduates and direct unsubsidized loans made to undergraduates, 9.5% on direct unsubsidized loans made to graduate students, 10.5% on direct plus loans made to graduate or professional students and parents of dependent undergraduate students. Direct loans are simple daily interest loans. This means that interest accrues daily. The amount of interest that accrues per day is calculated by dividing the interest rate on your loan as a decimal by the number of days in a year, and then multiplying that by the outstanding principal balance of the loan. For example, on a $10,000 direct unsubsidized loan with a 6.8% interest rate, the amount of interest that accrues per day while the loan has an outstanding balance of $10,000 is $1.86, calculated as follows: 0.068 divided by 365 multiplied by $10,000 equals 1.86. Log on to NSLDS to find out what the interest rates are on your loans. You may also find information on the TAMUK financial aid page. While you've been in school, in many or most cases, interest has been accruing on the principal of your loan. Now that your loan is entering repayment, that unpaid interest is added to the balance, and the amount you owe can suddenly be a lot more. This is called capitalization. Interest will also be capitalized at the end of any deferment or forbearance. Here's one hypothetical example of how this might work. Interest equals principal multiplied by rate multiplied by time. $5,500 multiplied by 0.068 multiplied by 5.5 years equals $2,057. Note, this interest capitalization occurred after it took the student 5 years to graduate, plus their 6-month grace period. In this case, 5.5 years transpired before the student entered repayment. Also note that interest rates are subject to change annually. This is also a good time to mention that paying the interest rate along the way would have kept the student's total debt balance at the original amount they borrowed, $5,550, at this point of graduation, putting them ahead of the game as they enter repayment. By the way, it's still true that you can help yourself by paying ahead. If you stay current on your payments and also prepay on the principal, you will pay less in interest. If you decide to exercise this option, be sure to specify that you intend the additional payment to apply to the principal. Both the direct and FFELP programs offer standard, graduated, extended, and income-driven repayment plans. Features of each plan are the following: standard, graduated, extended, income-based, income contingent, income sensitive, pay as you earn, the revised pay as you earn, or the repay REPAYE plans. Besides considering an alternative repayment plan as a first option when things are tough, there are other options. You may be eligible for deferment, which can sometimes be a better choice than forbearance. You can choose to defer student loan payments when certain criteria have been met. For example, during unemployment, economic hardship, and returning to school. Your servicer must determine if you meet the requirements for a deferment. Here are the important things to know about deferment. Deferment is a temporary suspension of payments when you're willing but unable to make payments. Since deferments are entitlements, if you qualify, the lender or servicer must grant it. Some deferments are restricted to borrowers with certain types of loans, or who borrowed within a specified time period. Note: the federal government pays the interest that accrues on subsidized loans. You are responsible for paying the interest that accrues on subsidized, plus, and grad plus loans. And finally, your servicer may capitalize the unpaid accrued interest. Now let's talk about forbearance. Since a deferment is generally a better choice, you may want to request a deferment before you request a forbearance. The servicer may grant a discretionary forbearance to help you fulfill repayment obligations and prevent default. It is important to remember that the servicer must approve the forbearance request before payments can be suspended. Forbearance permits reduced payments, an extension of time for making payments, or the temporary suspension of payments. What makes forbearance different from deferment? In most cases, forbearance is not an entitlement. However, forbearance is mandatory for teachers who qualify for teacher loan forgiveness. Mandatory forbearance may also be available for periods that collectively do not exceed 3 years, if the amount of your monthly student loan payments collectively is equal to or greater than 20% of your total monthly income. During a forbearance, you are responsible for paying the interest that accrues on any loan, including a subsidized loan. If you fail to make required interest payments during a forbearance period, your servicer may capitalize the unpaid accrued interest. Medical or financial problems that do not meet the requirements for deferment might qualify you for forbearance, as will other special circumstances. For example, if you have used up your deferment eligibility, forbearance may be an option. You should check with the lender or servicer for more information. Loan consolidation allows you to combine your loans to simplify repayment. It's an option if your loans are in a grace period or in repayment. You would then only have one loan, with one interest rate and repayment schedule. Let's talk about some advantages and possible drawbacks to consolidation. Consolidation can potentially lower your monthly payment amount. Private education loans cannot be consolidated with a federal consolidation loan. You will pay more interest over the life of the loan if the repayment period is extended. You may lose some benefits offered with the original loan. For example, cancellation benefits for a Perkins loan. Apply at either of the links provided. One thing to keep in mind with regards to taxes is that student loan interest, tuition, and fees can all be considered deductions, which reduce the amount of income you owe taxes on. Additionally, there are tax credits that you or your parents might be able to take called the American Opportunity, formerly HOPE, and Lifetime Learning Tax Credits. Basically, money paid during the tax year for college tuition and fees and required course materials may count against the tax debt you owe, reducing your tax bill. For more details on these credits, you can go to www.irs.gov and the TAMLC link provided. These are some circumstances under which loans can be forgiven or discharged. A loan discharge releases you from all or a portion of your loan obligation. Generally, discharges are for situations in which something has happened to you, often beyond your control. Most of this is pretty straightforward, but we want to clarify what is meant by the ability to benefit discharge. This means that a borrower may request a discharge in cases where he or she was unable to meet the legal requirements for employment in his or her state of residence for which the program of study was intended, due to age, physical or mental condition, criminal record, or other reason. For example, a student who is physically disabled due to having an amputated leg is admitted to truck driving school. The student's disability will prevent the student from getting his driving license when he completes the program. Another example would be if a school admits a student who has a felony record and the job the student trains for has the requirement that the employee have a clean criminal record. Loan forgiveness programs, on the other hand, are meant to reward you for completing a certain number of years of employment in a public service field, such as teaching or other specific fields. It also releases you from all or a portion of your loan obligation. In order to qualify for teacher loan forgiveness, you must have been employed as a full-time teacher for 5 complete consecutive academic years at a low-income eligible school or qualifying location. Forgiveness is available for up to $5,000 or up to $17,500 for certain highly qualified secondary math and science teachers and elementary and secondary special education teachers. See more details at the links provided. Public service loan forgiveness is available for borrowers with direct subsidized or unsubsidized, Grad Plus, or consolidation loans. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program was created to encourage individuals to enter and continue to work full-time in public service jobs. Under this forgiveness program, any outstanding balance of principal and accrued interest is forgiven after you make 120 monthly payments after October 1st, 2007 under standard, income-based, income contingent, or pay repayment. So how do you qualify for this forgiveness program? You must be working full-time for a public service organization, and each of the 120 payments must be made while employed at one of these organizations. Additionally, you must be employed in a qualifying position when you apply for forgiveness. These organizations include federal, state, or local government organization or agency, public child or family service agency, non-profit organization under Section 501c3 of IRS Code, a tribal college or university, other private organizations that provide services such as public interest law services, early childhood education, and public health, just to name a few. Finally, here are some websites that provide more details about your student loans. NSLDS.ed.gov is the place where you can find your loan history for all your federal loans. Also, there's StudentLoans.gov, which has more information about applying for the income-based repayment plans. At this site, You may also find loan servicer contact information. If you ever need to change repayment plans, you will need to call your loan servicer, so make sure that you know who your loan servicer is. To make sure that you receive all correspondence, keep your loan servicer informed if any changes to your contact information or enrollment, your address, phone number, and enrollment status. Another resource that is available is the Department of Education Student Loan Ombudsman's Office. If there is ever a problem with your loan, try to resolve it with your school and/or servicer. However, if you were not successful in resolving your situation, you should know that there is a student loan ombudsman whom you can contact. More information about the ombudsman can be found at the website presented here. Upon completion of this video, please fill out the survey below.